My name's Woolie, and this is Scrub Guides. Today, Arcade Sticks 101. Alright, so an arcade stick, otherwise known as a fight stick, aka an arcade controller, is a game controller that replicates the experience you had playing on an arcade cabinet. So the question, of course, that is asked is, do I need an arcade stick to be good at fighting games? Do I have to buy an arcade stick, or should I buy one in general? As of this day, in current year, the answer is unequivocally no. There's nothing wrong with using a pad. All new fighting games are designed with the expectation that most players don't spend the extra money on a luxury controller, so it's fine. There's enough going on in the game to make sure you can play and compete with just the controller. World champion players these days consist of both stick and pad players alike. I personally switch from one to the other depending on what the game is, because I've just gotten used to playing it one way or the other. Of course, keep in mind when I say playing on a pad, I literally mean using the directional pad. I don't suggest you use the thumbstick. It's really awkward and weird to even do a quarter circle motion. There's few exceptions where you'd switch over to it to do like, you know, a quick Zangief Ultra or something like that, but you got to do a 720 without jumping, that's fine. But otherwise, you want to stick to the cross on your controller. It might not be instinctual if this is your first time playing it, because a lot of games use that thumbstick, but fighting games, trust me, use the cross, use the directional pad. So with that said, the reason why you buy a fight stick is because you've made the choice based on familiarity or curiosity. You've looked at it and you've decided, hey, I think I might enjoy playing the game that way. I feel like I would have fun. But don't do it out of obligation. If you're worried about the financial hit it's going to take on your wallet, then don't buy it if you're feeling like you're going to be left behind without it, because you won't. You can play just as fine and do just as well using a controller. There's a few high-level techniques in certain games that require one or the other, but for the most part, these days, you're going to be fine. Remember as well that sticks are only as useful as your interest remains piqued in the games that use it, so, you know, be honest with yourself. If you know that within a few months' time, you might move on entirely, it might not be the best investment. The purchase should make sense for you. Keep in mind that most of what I'm about to say is my opinion. It's entirely possible that your preference for parts and feel are the exact opposite of mine. So there's no such thing as the final word on the best sticks. That being said, if it doesn't have Sanwa parts, get it out of my face. Nah, really, more than anything, what you gotta keep in mind when it comes to buying a stick, if you're asking yourself the question, is this. If the stick itself and the buttons are good quality, it barely matters what the box is or what they're attached to. Who cares what they look like? It's about the parts. What kind of stick should I buy? This is the next big question, and once you've decided to buy one, there's a plethora of options. It can be kind of overwhelming. There's so many individual companies with individual offerings, but here's my quick and dirty summary of the major categories you should be breaking it down into. There's the sub $100 stick category, including Mayflash, Kanba drones, fighting stick minis. There's the sub $200 category, including the Kanba Obsidian, the Hori Real Arcade Pro, the Mad Catz Tournament Edition sticks, and hitboxes. And then there's your luxury sticks that go beyond those prices, including the Dragon and the Hori VLX. There's customization options as well. I'll get into those a little bit later. But first, the sub $100 category is the biggest category. It's where most of the questions come from because it's the most affordable and it's understandable. But there's a very important caveat that goes alongside buying a stick for less than $100. You're getting what you pay for. You are getting unbranded parts. They're generally going to feel a lot worse than standard parts in a normal $200 range stick. So you have to keep that in mind. You're getting a less sturdy body. It's probably going to move around a lot when it's sitting on your lap. And you're getting low durability so that in the long run, there's much more breakable parts and there's likely no wire management. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with these smaller $60 to $80 sticks. So if you spend less than $100, you should honestly just keep in mind that if you play fighters often in the future, let's say weekly or so, you'll eventually be forced to replace it in what I would consider to be a short amount of time. If you're expecting a lighter commitment and you're alright with a more disposable peripheral, then go for it. It might be perfect for you, or the portability might be exactly what you're looking for. But as an aside, you can always buy the individual parts, like a different stick or buttons, and put them into the cheaper stick's body, providing that the measurement lines up. This is a valid option you can consider as well. The sub $200 price range is what I consider the standard. This is where you'll find the best parts, cased in sturdy, good bodies that are gonna last you a good while. They're often easily customizable as well. So one of these can do you right for years to come, as long as you're not the type that's gonna beat on it every time you lose. So Kanba, Hori, Mad Catz, Hitbox, Razer, 8Arc, these are all companies that have been putting sticks out in this price range, and my recommendation is to look for the ones with the Sanwa JLF stick and the Sanwa OBSC 30mm buttons. These are, and a lot of these sticks, including the Kanbas, they pick them as the defaults because generally, again, in my opinion and in many players' opinions, these are the best feeling sticks, the best feeling parts. These are what you want to go with. Hori sticks tend to have their own brand of buttons, the Hayabusa brand stick and buttons. These are fine for a lot of players, but personally, I've always felt they're too loose for my liking. Try them out if you get a chance, but that's just my feeling on it. Hitboxes are another unconventional option that you can go with if you're a player that's more comfortable with keyboard inputs, or if you need less stress on your wrists. You want to really think about a hitbox because they replace the stick part entirely with 4 directional buttons, and they're just as functional. You can play just as fine with a stick made of all buttons. Of course, then you've got the luxury end sticks that are up in the $300 plus price range, and these include the Kanba Dragon and the Hori VLX. They're heavy-duty beast sticks. They've got LEDs, lights, flashes, all the trimmings in the works, easy openings for part replacement, and I bought myself a Dragon personally. While I was using it, it was the best. It was pure bliss. However, I have to be honest and let you know that it broke on me. So, you know, it was just a stick. It's a replaceable thing. But do keep in mind that, yes, this can happen. Before discussing anything else, let's quickly go over the anatomy of the hardware itself. You've got the casing, the buttons, the PCB or circuit board, the wiring, and then there's the joystick itself. Each joystick has a number of mechanical parts, some of which determine how it feels when you use it. It's going to depend on the top, the spring, and the restrictor gate. The top is the shape of the lever that you hold when you play. The spring determines the resistance you feel when the lever tries to return to the center, and the restrictor gate determines the shape of the boundaries when you trace the lever along the edges. Most arcade machines you've played with probably used a square-shaped gate with 4 corners, but if you've ever played a game where you can only move in 2 directions, it's because there's a 2-way restrictor gate on it. So with this knowledge, when it comes to making a purchasing decision, the criteria I use to judge what to buy consists of many things like durability, size, features, and of course price. But more than any of these things, the parts are what matter most to me. What customization options do you have? Well, if you want to go a little bit further, you can customize your artwork. You can buy from your purchase stick. You can build one from scratch. You can change the casing, button stick types, the shape of the stick, the feel of the stick. There's a lot you can do, and there's all kinds of parts you can put into the body to make it feel your own. It's not for everybody, though, and generally speaking, the standard options are more than fine. And you can learn to do most of this customization with little more than a flat screwdriver and a pair of pliers, to be perfectly honest. So I mentioned before that I prefer Sanwa parts, but there's other options you can explore when it comes to customization. I'm going to go in depth just a little bit more, but when it comes to the parts themselves, some other options you can consider are Seimetsu. They have sticks and buttons that feel very similar, but not quite the same as Sanwa. You've got the HAP American-style sticks and competition push buttons. These are going to feel a lot like the old arcade cabinets you remember from, you know, Western arcades. So the large, rounded bat tops, the circular, strong, resistant sticks, and the convex surfaced push buttons. Then there's the Korean parts as well, which generally include sticks that have a more circular, elastic feeling shape and a flat surface to them. Each has its pros and cons. Personally, for me, I think Seimetsu feels a little bit less, just a little bit less precise, so I tend to stick with my Sanwas. The HAP American-style sticks and competition push buttons feel great, and they feel like the old arcades I remember, but they're so big and they take up so much space that you're going to have a hard time fitting them into a normal casing. you're likely going to have to make a custom box to fit them in. And the Korean parts, while I do find that the stick and buttons were all right, I didn't enjoy the fact that one of the pieces of the stick was made out of a sort of loose plastic or elastic feeling shape. And while most of the Sanwa sticks that you get have hard plastic and are not going to wear down that much, this rubbery feeling elastic part to the Korean sticks had me feeling like this was going to need to get replaced quite often, so I didn't enjoy that too much. That's going really in depth into the sticks, but if you're interested in looking into more customization, I suggest you can order parts from CanadianJoysticks.com. They're pretty solid, and you can get custom templates and tutorials from slagcoin.com. So look, each console generation, as we move from one to the other, generally will have different requirements for the PCB, aka the guts of the stick, in order to work on your console. Sometimes you'll find them that work on multiple, but usually that's not the case. Most sticks these days work with one console and PC, so that's why some of us own many of them. But generally what you'll see from generation to generation is that the same proven parts, aka buttons and stick, they're what we've gotten used to over the years with large arcade cabinets, and especially in Japan, the candy-style cabinets. They absolutely are the standard these days. Now, what kind of stick do I use personally? I use the Kanba Obsidian. This is a pretty good stick. All in all, it is all the parts I love, and I've come to rely on Kanba for sturdy sticks, good parts, good prices, and yeah, this one does it. It's got some cool blue LED things that light up on both sides. You can turn them off, of course. It's PS3, PS4, and PC compatible, but it's got that JLF stick I like. It's got those standard buttons that I enjoy, and yeah, it's generally been a sturdy, reliable stick. It's basically a smaller version of the Dragon, and it does include a compartment where you can put the wires in so that traveling is not a problem. So I definitely do like this. I recommend it a lot. And it's a lighter version of the previous combo stick I was using, the Dragon over here, which this thing is a beast. It's awesome. It's way bigger, and it feels great. It's the same parts here that I was just describing between the two, but you get so the touchpad up here for PS4 is just located in the center, whereas on the Obsidian it's a bit back more on the top surface there. But you get the option to pop the lid, so to speak, pop the trunk, and this opens up. When it's plugged in, it lights up, and you get to see inside and easily replace any parts here. You simply just pull out the two wires of the button, for example, you wanted to put in, take this little thing off with a screwdriver, put a new button in, and it even tells you exactly where each part is mapped, so it's very simple to replace anything you need to. Nice little dragon texture there. Very cool, a high-end expensive stick. It was a shame that it broke on me. I'm really bummed about that, but I was enjoying it up until the point that that happened. Before this generation of PS4 stuff, way back when Street Fighter 4 was a thing, I was playing on another Kanba, because again, I've come to trust their parts, and these were dual modded. So that means that this stick worked on both PS3s and 360s, and that was a really handy thing to have back in the day when you would travel to any tournament and you didn't know what you're going to end up with. So this is an example of an older Kanba stick that this one I customized in order to have travel be a little bit easier for me. I put on a stick part that allows me to completely remove the stick itself and this dust cover and just travel with this flat surface here so that it didn't stick out in the bag. And then when the time came and I was ready, just popped it back in and was good to go. So that's an option as well. There's lots of customizing you can do. Of course, if you wanted to also, you can consider getting a good travel bag is pretty important. I picked up a travel bag for my sticks last Evo. This is from Split Frame. They're pretty awesome because they're dedicated space for your sticks. There's little parts inside that you can use to insulate. I know it doesn't show too well on camera here, but I would generally recommend one of these if you wanted to go all in on stick safety and security. You can always fit it into a normal backpack, of course, but the nice thing about these is that the way the straps work, It's some kind of magic. It feels lighter than it actually is. Something that's heavy in here, when it's tightened up properly, feels a lot lighter. So I generally recommend grabbing one of those types of cases, or bags rather, if you're considering that type of option. That's what I use right now. But just to show you some of the other options that you can consider. So here's an example of some of the older generation of sticks. You've got the old TEs. These are the old Mad Cat sticks, and this was one I just customized the surface here. I keep this around, but this is customized artwork. You can get buttons that are generally still reliable, you know, Sanwa type buttons, but you can get transparent covers so that you fit some of your artwork inside. That's pretty cool and fun. You can go with one of the newer generation of Mad Cat sticks, which this was the Xbox One stick that I got for Killer Instinct, and this too does feature the ability to open it up, customize the inside. You know, you can do a lot of easy replacing of parts and things inside here, and this too did have screwdriver and replacement button spots over here as well. So there's each stick has a bunch of cool features. This is a really old one that had an American style hack stick and these old style arcade buttons as well. This was like a PS, I want to say 2 stick, but notably these, you see how much bigger it is compared to the thickness of, you know, a Japanese style arcade stick. So you got to consider that as well. Lastly, the custom option. You can go with, this is something that I built, and this too has an American style arcade stick. It's got the translucent buttons based on the artwork of Chun-Li that I threw into it here. And, you know, this is just a matter of taking a controller apart, wiring it up, and then soldering each part to the button bottom. So, like, it seems pretty intense, but I promise you it's not that bad once you learn the basics of just wiring things. It doesn't take that long. And again, I pointed out that you can learn a lot from heading on over to slagcoin.com. As I mentioned, the Sanwa JLF stick is an important part of what I look for in each of my sticks, so this is what you're generally getting. And yeah, I had an important story that I wanted to share about customizing your sticks. So early on, I went crazy and I pretty much I took one of these Sanwa JLF sticks, I put a bat top on it so that it would feel a little bit more like the old American style arcade sticks that I was used to. I put an octagonal restrictor on it so that instead of a square shape, the arcade stick would end up feeling... Do I have one of these here? I'm pretty sure I do. But there's an octo gate, so that, here you go. My directions would have an easier time going in doing quarter circles and things like that, because I was having a hard time with the square corners. And I put in an extra spring even just to tighten things up, and it was a whole tricked out thing. It was cool, it worked great, and I was having a good time with it until one day I went to a tournament and it stopped working. And when it stopped working, I was pretty much stuck trying to survive using anyone else's stick that I could borrow, and I could barely do anything with it, and it felt terrible. It felt like I couldn't play anymore because I didn't have my crazy tricked out customized stick. That feeling sucked, I hated it, and I realized at that point that it was not worth it, that I should just learn to play on standard parts and standard buttons, because you never know when you're going to be forced to use those in any circumstance if you go out to play fighters elsewhere. So with that said, keep that in mind when you're customizing, and, you know, I guess just consider that you might be using a controller that's not yours one day, and if the only thing you've ever gotten used to is your very particular setup, you're gonna feel really, really crappy about it. So with that, I pretty much think you have enough information to go out and make an informed stick purchase. Hope that helps, and stay tuned for more Scrub Guides.